will highlight not just the immense opportunities it presents, things like increased efficiency and the creation of entirely new job categories, but also the significant challenges, things like mounting cybersecurity risks, dramatic shifts in the labor market. We'll explore how companies are adapting, how communication is fundamentally changing, and even how something like human loyalty is being redefined in, well, unexpected ways.
Okay, let's dive in then. Let's unpack this concept of Industry 4.0. Our sources describe it as an unprecedented revolution, one set to rapidly increase production efficiency, reduce the demand for human work through automation, and maybe optimistically free up significant time for further development and innovation. But to really grasp it, I think we need to understand where it came from, its lineage.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how it directly builds on previous industrial revolutions. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. The first, back around 1765, that was driven by steam power. It fundamentally replaced hard human labor, fostered mass production. You know the story. Then came the second, from about 1870, bringing electricity, gas, oil, enabling further work facilitation, huge economic growth. And the third, starting maybe in the 1950s, that introduced computers, IT systems, automation, leading to the rise of electronics, advanced robotics, that sort of thing.
And now, Industry 4.0. So what's the distinguishing factor for this fourth revolution? What truly sets it apart from, say, the third one with its computers and automation?
Well, if we zoom out a bit, Industry 4.0 is fundamentally about interconnecting devices and, crucially, enabling them to make autonomous decisions. Our sources describe it as a complex digital transformation of all fixed assets and their integration with partners contributing to the value chain within a digital ecosystem. That's a bit academic, but...
Right, so break that down a bit.
Essentially, it's the seamless integration of systems. It's creating these vast networks that connect people, digitally controlled machines, and devices, all using advanced ICT programs and, of course, the internet. It's the interconnection and autonomy.
Okay, interconnection and autonomy. So what does that mean for the specific technologies, the building blocks underpinning this whole thing? What do you really need to understand to get Industry 4.0?
Yeah, the building blocks are key, a key consideration for these core building blocks. Well, the digital economy relies heavily on elements like the Internet of Things, IoT. That just means objects, everyday objects even, equipped with sensors, communicating, exchanging data.
Like my smart fridge telling me I need milk.
Sort of, yeah, but think bigger scale. Industrial machines talking to each other, optimizing processes. Then there's artificial intelligence, AI. These are systems that mirror human intelligence, systems that can interactively learn and correct tasks based on the data they gather.
Okay.
We also have cloud computing, obviously, for massive data storage and access from anywhere. The pervasive influence of social media, which feeds into data and communication. Enterprise resource planning, ERP systems, which kind of unify a company's internal data and processes.
Right.
Mobile technologies are huge too, including things like augmented reality, AR, and near-field communication, NFC, for close-range data exchange. And we can't forget 3D printing for creating physical objects from digital models and blockchain for decentralized, transparent transactions. These technologies working together are crucial because they really do blur the lines between the physical, the digital, and even the biological spheres.
Wow, okay. That's a lot of tech interacting. This revolution sounds like it demands pretty significant shifts in how businesses actually operate. What's the core insight here regarding changes to traditional business models?
Indeed, it's a huge shift. The key insight our sources offer is that Industry 4.0 doesn't just ask for innovation, it kind of demands a radical shift. A shift towards continuous, decentralized experimentation, and importantly, learning from failure at a pace that was, well, previously unimaginable.
Learning from failure, that's not always easy for big companies.
No, it's not. But the technology creates this feedback loop that basically forces businesses to embed agility as their core operating principle. This means cultivating people who, as the source puts it, think big, are ambitious, enterprising, and investigative, nonconformist and flexible, open-minded to irrational and outside-the-box ideas, and ready for failures.
That's a huge shift in mindset, definitely.
Yeah.
And I imagine that comes with significant resistance in some organizations. What are some of the biggest hurdles companies face in making that transition, especially thinking about core management things like control and communication?
You've absolutely hit on a critical point there. With Industry 4.0, many routine tasks, many operational decisions, They'll increasingly be handled by these cyber-physical systems, machines making decisions.
Right.
So this means human employees, their role pivots. It shifts away from just hitting productivity metrics towards more creative activities. Their primary demand becomes creative problem-solving, innovativeness, not just churning things out.
Okay, so how does management control that if it's not about output metrics as much?
Well, that requires this profound shift in management control, moving away from purely cybernetic mechanisms, which are basically, direct supervision, automated tracking, quantitative output
So
measurement.
traditional stuff.
Exactly. Towards more social controls. And this is where it gets interesting. We're talking about things like shared ideology, building trust. Even the source mentions spirituality
Spirituality.
in management.
Yeah, it sounds a bit out there, maybe, but it's about fostering deep goal congruence, a real commitment within the workforce that goes beyond just the paycheck.
That's fascinating, almost paradoxical, isn't it? In a world driven by hard tech, you need softer skills, even something like spirituality. But how does fostering spirituality practically translate into a strategy for a company trying to hit quarterly targets? Isn't there a tension there?
That's a really perceptive question, and it speaks to how leadership itself has to evolve. It's not about religion, obviously. It's more about shared purpose, a sense of belonging, something that transcends the purely transactional employee-employer relationship. And the sources emphasize that Industry 4.0 fundamentally requires a shift away from those traditional top-down hierarchical communication systems.
Towards networks. Exactly. Towards more agile, networked solutions. Our sources show some pretty compelling research comparing IT projects managed with these two different models, hierarchical versus network communication.
And what did they find?
The results were striking. Network systems achieved over 80% success rates. Compare that to only 50% for the traditional hierarchical systems.
Wow, that's a huge difference. Why?
Well, it seems to be because network systems enable much more flexible actions. They facilitate this constant flow of information and knowledge among everyone involved, not just up and down the chain. And they're far better at building teams that can quickly deliver high-quality solutions. Critically, they also spot implementation risks and deviations much earlier, allowing for timely intervention, faster feedback loops.
Okay, that makes sense. So one thing to talk about these concepts in theory, but how is Industry 4.0 actually playing out? In the real world, let's look at a concrete example, maybe renewable energy that's so vital today.
Yeah, good example. Industry 4.0 offers completely new possibilities for exploiting renewable energy sources. Take photovoltaics, PV, solar panels, for instance. Its development is heavily influenced by these digital technologies: smart grids, predictive maintenance for panels, optimized energy storage. Germany, for example, is a European leader in PV, showing the potential for mature economies. And we're seeing dynamic growth in many emerging markets, too, like Poland's rapid adoption of micro-installations in household small-scale solar. About 75% of that growth is prosumer-led.
Prosumer.
Yeah, where the consumers are also the producers of energy. Their smart meters feed data back, the grid optimizes. It really showcases how digitalization supports decentralized energy production.
Okay, that sounds like a tremendous opportunity for countries, especially those looking to diversify their energy mix and maybe empower individuals. But does it come with any significant caveats, any potential downsides we should be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. Another crucial aspect is definitely the risks involved. While Industry 4.0 certainly offers opportunities like new high-value added jobs, fostering an innovative economy, it also presents significant threats. We talked about job losses earlier. Global estimates suggest maybe 10–20% of jobs lost, but it's worth noting that studies in specific regions, like some cited for Poland, forecast potentially higher impacts, maybe up to 36% in certain sectors?
That high.
Potentially, yeah. It highlights the need for really localized adaptation strategies. It won't be uniform everywhere. There's also the risk of, inadequacy of staff qualifications. Do people have the skills for these new roles? And a potential outflow of industry if new technologies aren't implemented properly, maybe eroding existing cost advantages.
Right. Skills gap is a big one. The risks we just discussed, particularly around data integrity and skills gaps, they really highlight how crucial effective information management is going to be. And speaking of data, what about big data itself? We hear that term thrown around constantly. How does that fit into this industrial revolution?
Big data is, it's a global phenomenon, absolutely, and a core component of Industry 4.0. It's often described by that 3V model. You might have heard of it.
Vaguely, volume.
Right. Volume, meaning just vast data sets needing processing. Velocity, emphasizing that data is often time sensitive, needs quick, sometimes real-time processing. And variety, referring to all the diverse types of data structured stuff from databases, unstructured text, social media posts, sensor data, images.
Okay.
But I think the real game changer with Industry 4.0 and big data isn't just knowing what happened, it's about anticipating what will happen. It shifts businesses from just reactive operations to proactive foresight. It allows for things like predictive maintenance on machines, personalized customer journeys on an unprecedented scale, entirely new data-driven service offerings.
So it's like data as a crystal ball, almost.
In a way, yeah. Companies like Netflix use this constantly to personalize communication, make content purchasing decisions based on analyzing millions of subscriber preferences. Amazon leverages it for product recommendations, sure, but also for problem solving, which effectively builds trust. Walmart apparently saw conversion rates increase by nearly 15% just by implementing a smarter semantic search system powered by this kind of data analysis.
So data is an incredibly powerful tool, driving efficiency, predictive power, hyper-personalization. But what about the vulnerabilities? This hyper-connected world must have downsides. How does Industry 4.0 deal with cybersecurity? It almost sounds like these industrial robots are like super smart toddlers, incredibly capable, but maybe in dire need of stronger parental controls.
That's actually a great analogy because cybersecurity is, without doubt, a critical challenge in the Industry 4.0 landscape. Maybe the critical challenge. Smart plants, smart factories, despite their immense efficiency gains, are broadly exposed to new kinds of security risks. Research has shown that industrial robots, for example, sometimes run on outdated software, vulnerable operating systems. They might have weak authentication systems. Some industrial devices are even found on public IP addresses.
Seriously? Public IPs?
Yeah, making them relatively easy targets for hackers. Attack scenarios on industrial robots have demonstrated how attackers could potentially alter or introduce minor defects in the manufactured product, subtle sabotage. Or they could physically damage the robot, steal valuable industry secrets, or even, terrifyingly, injure humans working nearby.
Wow, that's sobering.
It is. But this serious threat also, on the flip side, creates significant new career opportunities in specialized security operating centers, SOCs, people needed to defend these systems.
Right. It seems that while technology is advancing rapidly, taking over more tasks, humans remain absolutely central to making it work and making it secure. What are the broader societal and economic effects then, especially concerning jobs in the workforce?
Well, the sources generally indicate that automation and digitalization will undoubtedly reduce production time, increase sales, boost efficiency overall. However, those concerns about unemployment are very real, as we touched on. Globally, maybe 10–20% of jobs could be lost or significantly changed. Some studies, like those Polish ones, suggest even higher impacts in certain sectors depending on the region and how ready it is. This absolutely necessitates a redefinition of existing work posts. Many jobs won't disappear, but they'll change, and it requires the creation of entirely new jobs we haven't even thought of yet.
Like what?
Well, there's a clear rising demand for engineers, data scientists, IT specialists, cybersecurity experts, AI ethicists. The list goes on. It really means that lifelong education and continuous professional adaptation become not just, beneficial, but absolutely crucial for individuals to thrive in this new landscape. You can't just rely on your initial degree anymore.
Continuous learning. That's key. This leads us to a really fascinating area you mentioned earlier. How do these technological shifts, this increasing automation, influence something as fundamental as employee loyalty? If automation is changing everything else, surely it impacts our basic human connections to work, right?
This brings up a really interesting point discussed in the source material. It delves into employee loyalty, particularly within the ICT sector, which is sort of at the forefront of these changes. And what's particularly insightful here is a clear trend they identify. Loyalty seems to be increasingly directed more towards the professional group or one's individual career path rather than towards the specific organization they happen to work for at the moment.
So loyalty to being a coder rather than loyalty to company X.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. This often stems from what the source calls a calculative participation mindset. Essentially, employees cooperate primarily if it pays off for them personally, if it increases their market value, boosts their CV, helps them acquire new valuable competences. It's a very pragmatic, almost self-serving approach to loyalty.
Okay, calculative loyalty.
Yeah.
So If loyalty is shifting away from the organization itself, does that mean traditional ideas about company culture and team building need a complete overhaul? Or is it more about finding new ways to align that individual ambition with the organization's goals? What does this calculative loyalty mean for organizations trying to build cohesive teams and achieve their goals in this Industry 4.0 era?
Well, if we look at the broader implications, this kind of calculative loyalty, while perhaps understandable from the employee's perspective, can pose significant risks for the organization. For instance, it might lead to a reluctance to share unique or specialized knowledge. Why share if it doesn't directly benefit my career progression? Or, even more concerning, it could lead to situations like concealing own errors in the name of protecting the unity of the professional group. Protecting a fellow coder, maybe, even if their mistake is serious.
Oh, covering for each other.
Precisely. And the sources give a pretty stark example. Imagine faulty software errors. If they're covered up by a professional group to protect one of their own, those errors can quickly infect the whole system in a highly connected, IoT-driven factory. It could potentially paralyze operations, leading to huge economic consequences. It's like a computer virus, but stemming from human behavior and misaligned loyalty.
That's a critical insight. It really highlights a very real human challenge right in the middle of this automated world. It seems to underscore that technology, no matter how advanced, is still deeply intertwined with, well, human psychology and social dynamics. So what's the solution? How do organizations navigate this apparent paradox?
Well, the paradox of Industry 4.0, as the sources suggest, is that while it drives incredible technological advancement, it simultaneously increases the need for higher social competences for managers. Managers need to be more than just efficient technical experts, although that's still important, of course. They also need to be a kind of mentor, someone who genuinely understands their employees' specific needs and motivations, who can navigate these changing loyalties, and who can actively build stronger, more cohesive team relationships based on trust and shared purpose. Not just calculation.
So more human skills are needed, not fewer.
Exactly. It's about bridging the technical and the deeply human and recognizing that true sustainable innovation in this new era relies heavily on both. You can't just focus on the tech.
So today, we've taken a really deep dive into Industry 4.0. We've gone from its historical roots, looked at the defining technologies like AI and IoT, all the way to its transformative impact on business models, management control, communication.
Yeah, and we explored some real-world applications in renewable energy, the immense power and pitfalls of big data.
Right, and confronted those significant challenges, cybersecurity being a huge one, but also the evolving nature of work itself and this fascinating shift in employee loyalty.
And I think we've seen how this revolution demands incredible adaptability, a commitment to continuous learning, and maybe most importantly, a profound shift in focus towards fostering human creativity and social connections, even as machines become more autonomous and intelligent.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, listening right now, as we all navigate this rapidly accelerating industrial revolution? Here's maybe a final thought to consider. If the ability to manage these increasingly complex technical systems depends more and more on those intangible human factors, things like trust, loyalty, shared purpose, how might your own skills, your own priorities need to evolve for you to really thrive in the world of Industry 4.0?